Okay, what we're going to do now is part 2, which is go in and have a look at the creating a setup and assigning it to the riff. So if we go into setup mode, usually I use 126 internal voices as my default template. I know Brian uses the same. The good thing about internal voices is it's got all the default program controller mappings on it. So all your sliders, your mod wheel and all that are already assigned. If you go into the clear setup or the clear setup, they don't have that, and I don't think the default setup does either. Let's just have a quick look at that. Yeah, see, none of these destinations are assigned in the default one. But what you can do, I think you might be able to change that and set it up. But if you go into this one and have a look, you'll see that the wheels are assigned, all the sliders are assigned, the pedals are assigned, so all this stuff's already set up for you. Okay, and it's how that you normally make it work. If you want to change configurations on your keyboard, like how program mode operates, you want to assign different controllers to things, default setups, or when you change, I'd suggest you start with this one and make a copy of it and save everything to that, rather than going through and making a changing the existing setup. And then what you can do is in the master mode you can change what your, actually I think it's a MIDI mode output, you can change what your default setup is for your program files. So anyway, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to use this setup. So if we just go out of that, pardon me, and come back into that. Alright, what you see is we've got program number 1. So what we need to do is we need to find out we need 3 zones on this. So first thing I'm going to do is make 2 more zones, and then we're going to go back into the song mode and find out what programs we use. So what I want to do is new zone. Okay, so now we've got 3 zones here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a riff to each of these. I'm going to assign a riff to each of these zones, and they're going to play back the individual parts, and I'm going to have keys assigned to them so I can start them and stop them. Okay, so let's just save this, rename as setup tutorial, and just in case you're wondering, I do tend to name things the same. So if I'm using a song inside a setup, I tend to name them the same in the way I'm working. Same if I use effects, and they're all specific to that setup. I'll usually name it and then put something on the end. So if it's a delay, it might be setup tutorial delay or something like that. And that way it's easier for me to keep track of it and know what I've used those effects or those objects for later on my editing. So that's just a housekeeping thing I do, but everyone's got their own different way of working. I'm not saying it's the right way or wrong way, but if you're interested in how I do it, that's how I do it. So let's go. I missed the letter. Setup tutorial. Okay. Save that. Okay. Right, let's go back into the song. And on channel 1 we had 107. So let's go back into the setup. Edit 107. Okay. Exit. Yes, save that. Go back to song mode. I want to go to channel 2, 119. So we'll go into this, edit, upper layer. To go upper layer, use the channel layer buttons to the left of the screen. If you're wondering how I did that, that's the easiest way, just to go up and down. In fact, I don't know if there's another way to do it. But use channel layer buttons to the left of the display. Easy way to do it. Okay, exit, save, song mode, and we're going to go 3 is 275. Okay. Set up, edit, 275. Okay. Alright, so if I play all 3 of those sounds playing at the same time, and that's generally the way that you set these things up. So what we might do later on, if we've got time, we might put another layer onto this which we can play over the top of this. But for now, we're not going to worry about it. So let's go in and in the key velocity, I'm going to keep these. I'm not sure how this is going to behave actually, but I'm just going to set these to a pretty narrow range. So low key and high key, and I'm going to do this on all three of the. I just want to see how this actually behaves when I put the riffs on. Alright, so there's nothing up the keyboard. They're all assigned down the bottom end, and I just want to see how the riffs actually respond to this. So, alright, the next thing we need to do is, so what we've done now is we've assigned the voices to the different zones. So we've got 3 zones, and we've assigned the same voices that we use in that song, which is just an easy way of getting the sounds that we use in the song. Okay, next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the riff pages. So if you scroll across the bottom, you'll see you've got riff 1 and riff 2. So you go into riff 1, we're on zone 3 at the moment, so let's go to zone 1. We want to turn this riff on, and we want to use that song that we just created, which is 1027, set up tutorial, and I want to play from bar 1 to bar 9. Okay, source track. Now you can play all 3 of them, so I think if we play this now, alright, so what's happened is that we can trigger all 3 of these. We've triggered all these sources at the same time. So if you just want to get a source to play back straight away, that's an easy way to do it. So my answer to my question is that if you haven't got the sounds enabled on it, like the keys enabled, you can't actually trigger it, which is interesting. But anyway, not to worry about that. Okay, so what we want to do is that. So what I was saying before is that if you just want a setup to play back a song on a key press, you can just assign it to one zone, and it'll play. You can then just assign source track to all, and it'll grab all of the data from that song and play it back on the relative channel. So even though those zones, that the riff isn't assigned to that zone, you can still, the cursor's actually sending MIDI data out into the into its insides, and it's receiving it back in on the relevant MIDI channel. So essentially what we're doing is so the way we've got it set up right now is that when I press a key in the key range, it sends out, it plays the song back, and it sends MIDI out to the rest of the PC3, and then the MIDI comes back in onto channels 1, 2 and 3, which we've already assigned sounds to on the channel, on the was it channel program page. Okay, so the setup is now receiving MIDI data in from those songs and are reassigning it to the relative zones and playing back notes. So in setup mode, it doesn't stop you, unless you specifically tell it, it doesn't stop you from receiving external MIDI in from a sequencer or from song mode or whatever. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Real simple way just to get it to play back. And this is similar to how arrange mode used to work on the K2600, is that you had a single opportunity to assign a song to a setup, and you could play back all the channels. Okay, so what we're going to do now though is we're going to actually just select the source track, which is the drums. Oh, sorry, it's the bass sound. So if we play that now, okay. We're not going to rechannelize this, but if you can rechannelize it, so you can yeah, basically pick a track and then play it back at a what this means is that you're going to pick a track from the MIDI track and you're going to play it back on this zone. So in this case here, because we're playing, in fact we can turn it on, it doesn't make any difference, and it's probably a good idea generally to leave that on. But if you don't turn it on, what it does is it takes source track 1 and it plays it back on channel 1. So even if you're working on zone 3 or 4, it will play back channel 1. If that makes sense. If you turn rechannel on and we're picking source track 1. Well, okay, let's do this as an example. I'll show you how. I'll demonstrate how this works. Let's go to source track 2. Okay. So if we turn channelize off, right, we're hearing our drums. Okay, and it's playing back on zone 2, which is the drum channel. If we turn rechannelize off, what it's going to do is grab the drum sequences and play it back on the bass sound. Okay, so that's how rechannelize works. So it's probably a good idea to leave it on because it means that it's going to grab whichever channel you want to check and it's going to play back the sound that's assigned to the zone. Okay, you've got a transpose parameter, you've got a root note, which the transpose lets you transpose a root note. I can't remember exactly what it does at the moment, but we might have a look at that at some stage in the future. Okay, so let's go up to alright. Now let's have a look at, this is what we want to do here, is we want to change the trigger and release, and this is so we want to change this, so I want to trigger this just on this C, and I want to release it with this. That's a bit weird. It's triggering on the wrong note. Alright, that's not working how it's meant to. Alright guys, just to let you guys know what's going on here is I'm actually pressing the C2 button now and it's not triggering. If I press the C sharp it is triggering. Yeah. Alright, that's interesting because D is stopping at trigger. Alright, I'm wondering if I've transposed something here somewhere. No. Well, I have to have a look at that. That might be a little bug. Right. Anyway, so what we've done now is I've got it triggering on apparently C sharp 2. Let's go back to Riff page. So it definitely says C2 and that's C2. If I hold down C, anyway, let's just take these down one. So it's triggering where I want it to trigger. And what I'll do, let's just go back to this sorry. Okay. So if we go back. Alright, looks like I have to extend these up a bit. Alright, so what we're doing now, we're triggering on C1, sorry, C2, and turning off with C sharp 2. Okay, and we're going to do the same with the next two zones. So let's just go through to riff 1. Turn this on. We're going to use the same song, and there's no reason you can't use the same song because we've separated all that. It's all in different channels. So we're going to do the same thing. 9. We're going to go through to source track 2. We're going to rechannelize that, and we're going to go through to riff 2. We're going to trigger that on D and turn it off on D sharp. Okay, so now we need to just go down and Alright, so zone 2 we can trigger independently by using the D key and then turning it off with the next black key there. So okay, it's not synced up at the moment, but we won't worry about that. We're going to do that in a second. Okay, so now what we're going to do is do the same thing on the third zone. Turn it on 1027. We're going to go through to 9. Now, what I really should have done is in the song, I should have actually trimmed that song back to 910 so that it's a little bit slack of me. Usually I like to do that sort of stuff. You don't need to, and there are, I'm not sure if there's defaults anymore. I'm sure I came across some when I was doing some early beta testing. Some of the songs and that went well beyond what was actually used. So they weren't very tidy in terms of endpoints. In fact, I don't think you could actually edit the endpoint in an early OS. But in any case, so some of them were a little bit messy and a little bit untidy. But when I program, I like to usually just keep those things sort of nice and tidy. I just haven't done it today, but because you can control it from within here. So we're going to, again, go to source track 3. We're going to rechannelize that. You don't. I've explained that already. Right, and we're going to go through and we're going to go to the. We're going to use the next two keys. Actually, I should have done these on the F, G, and H. But anyway, we're going to trigger this on E2 and F2. Okay, so let's go back to the Riff 2 page. Right, we're going to trigger that on E2 is what I want to trigger it on, but I know I have to take it back one now because there's a bug there, which I'm going to let Kurzweil know about very shortly. Okay, so alright, why isn't that starting up? Oh, okay, that's why, because it comes in at the end. Alright, so what we've done now is we've assigned these 3 parts to keys so we've got keys to turn them on, keys to turn them all off, and we'll go back in the performance. In the next section, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and assign them to that. But first thing I want to do before I go to that is we're going to sync these up. So we need to go back to the Riff 2 page, which is here, and we need to set the sync zone. So what we're going to do is we're going to set them all to sync to actually it doesn't matter what riff we'll just do the first available, and release sync zone, we're going to do that on the downbeat weight. So okay, and the BPM for all of them I want to be the setup, so I'm going to have it set within the setup. Okay, and the place that you set this in the setup is on the common page. So if you go through the common page, you'll see there's a tempo up there. Okay, so hopefully now let's just test it, make sure that that all works. Oh, hang on. Right, zone 1. Right, we're going to trigger the second zone now. Trigger the third zone. So you can hear now that they're all synced up by using these sync settings. Okay, and we've turned them off. Alright, so that's a real simple way of how to assign riffs to key presses within the thing. So we're going to take another quick break now. When I come back, we're going to work out how we're going to assign controllers to take over these key presses for us. Okay, so I'll be back shortly.